I'm anxious to talk to you because I love stories like yours. Guys who basically created their own life. Just by learning to think well. But why don't we
Hmm.
start kind of on that journey by giving us a sense of your upbringing? Like, what were the formative years like? What was your life like as a kid? What were your parents like? What were the big forces that shaped you early on, and maybe some of the influences that kind of led you down the path you are today.
Sure. So, come from the city of Philadelphia, PA. Now I'm in South Florida. But growing up,
Right.
in the inner city, we all play sports, especially young black kids. We all play football, basketball. Usually, those are two sports. I played a little bit of baseball, and then the normal
Right.
like street sports, kickball, etc. First team sport I tried was some football, but I never really played because I never got around to getting the equipment. Then baseball, I didn't really have talent for that. Then basketball, I started, which was actually pretty late, around the age of 14. So that it's
Okay.
pretty late if you're going to try to go anywhere in sports, college, let alone
Right.
the pros. But as far as
Right.
my upbringing, my parents, I credit them. There wasn't anyone who really taught me basketball. My parents didn't even teach me basketball. They're not even that tall. I'm way taller than both of my parents, even though they are
Interesting.
biological. We did the tests and everything. But my mom's like
That's
five
interesting.
seven. Yeah, my dad's like 5'8", maybe 5'9", but I'm 6'4". And
Okay.
I when I started playing basketball, I don't have any brothers. I have a sister who's a year older, and maybe she's not an athlete. I didn't have anyone, no, nobody in my family. Of course, everybody in the neighborhood played basketball, but where I come from, it's not like there are so many, mentors, possible mentors around. So nobody took
Right.
me under their wing or anything like that. So I really taught myself how to play sports. But because of the upbringing I had, my parents were really about, go to school, get a degree, get good grades,
Right.
etc. My mom's an educator, so she was all into go to school, do well in school. If you want to play
Right.
sports, cool, but if you don't do well in school, then we take sports away. You know how parents, at least in the
Yeah.
generation I came up, that's how it was. So
Right.
when I started playing sports, Mark, I just took the same discipline that I had to apply to school and doing household chores and raking leaves and shoveling snow. I took that same discipline. I just applied it to playing sports because that's the only thing that I knew. Because at this point,
Right.
we're talking the 90s here. There's no YouTube or Instagram or even a podcast to turn to get information from some person that you never met. Either you know
Right.
somebody who can help you out or you figure it out on your own. That's basically the only options that you had. So I had to basically figure it out on my own. So once I learned it and then the internet came along, that's when I started kind of paying it forward. That
Yeah.
eventually became a business opportunity, but who knew that
Well, but
that
did
was
you?
even going to
So
become
did you?
business?
But did you play in high school, like, and have high school coaches and stuff like that? I mean, you had to
I
have some
played,
sort of team.
yeah. So as far as basketball goes, just quickly to tell you that story, I played one
Okay.
year of high school basketball. So I tried out for the team every year, but I only made it one year, my senior year. And the school that
Is
I
that
went to,
right?
there's no freshman team, no JV, no, we didn't have junior varsities or anything. We only had one team.
Right.
So if you make the
Right.
main team or you don't play. So I played that one year. I scored 2 points per game. Now, for those who don't understand basketball, that's not a lot. Now, if you play, I always tell people, if I played soccer or hockey, I'd be in the Hall of Fame, 2 points a game. But in basketball, that's not much. You're just sitting on the bench. So for college, Mark, I walked on, which meant nobody knew who I was. I literally walked in the gym and had to earn my spot as a nobody. The coach didn't even had
Right.
never seen me before. So I did
Right.
play in college, but I was playing at the Division III level, which is just the third tier of college sports.
Right.
Usually pro athletes don't come out of the D3 level. They come from the D1 and maybe a few from the D2. So getting out of
Right.
college, I had to hustle my way into the pros. And that's really where I started to hone and sharpen my sales and marketing skills before I even knew that that's really what I was doing. I understood it was going to be a business for me to get in, and also understood that there were a lot of players around my level, my skill level, who wanted to play overseas, but there were not enough jobs for all of us to get one. So being a professional athlete is not like being a doctor or a lawyer where a city will take as many as pass the exams
Yeah.
and you open a business. It could be 1,000 if you want 1,000. But in basketball, there's a limited number of jobs. Not everybody can get one. So I knew I would have
Right.
to sell myself. I knew it was more of a sales job than it was a skills job, even though many athletes think to be a pro athlete, you just have to be really good. Yes, you do. That's the entry fee. But there are still, it might be 1,000 guys who are really good, but only 100 jobs. So how do you select that
Interesting.
100 out of that 1,000? So that's when I really started focusing on marketing and selling. And that now that's pretty much what I do.
All right. So I'm still kind of blown away by this. So you played D3.
Yeah.
You had good skills, but probably not, in your own estimation. It sounds like at the level of a D1, Big Eight or whatever.
Right.
And yet you
Fair.
still believe that you could play professional basketball. Like, so where did that
That's
come
correct.
from? Where did that belief come from that you could play professional basketball? And then where did how did you find the drive to like, or the mindset to, set on a path to go from a walk-in D3 player to playing professional basketball?
Well, that's a great question. We can have a whole conversation just on that. So
Yeah,
coming from
let's do that.
all right. So I mean, what was the first question? The first question was, how did I get the idea that I could do it?
Yeah, where did you even
Was
get the idea or the belief that you could do it or would do it? And then where did the drive come from?
Okay, so the belief that I could do it since I started late, I started playing around 14. I always felt like I was still getting better. So even though the outside results, if you had been looking at me from the outside looking in, you would have said, "All right, this kid, he enjoys basketball, but it's probably not going to be his career." But I could
Mhm.
always feel like I was getting better. So age 18 was that's a point when a lot of young men, especially where I come from, pretty much decide, okay, I'm not going to be an athlete. Let me go do something else in my life. And usually they're right. But at age 18, I didn't have much success to show on paper, but I could still feel internally that I was improving. I couldn't prove that to anybody, but I felt like it. That's the one reason that I
Right.
stuck with the game. But I had decided probably around age 16, Mark, that I was going to aim to be a pro athlete, even though I had no idea whatsoever how to do it, what I was going to need to do, the requirement. I didn't know anything. I just knew that's what I wanted to do, become a pro athlete. It
But
was
do you
basically a
remember
pipe
where that
dream.
idea came from? Again, I love to
Man,
like
TV.
there's got to be a moment in time, right, where
Yeah.
you just that idea popped in your head and you just
Uh,
latched onto it. Do you remember where that came from?
it really just came from I always been a visualizer, Mark, in that I
Have you?
always try to
Okay.
visualize, where am I going to go, who am I going to be, even before I knew it was called visualization. I didn't even know that was an actual thing. I thought everybody did
Hmm.
that. So I always would try to picture, where am I going with this? What's the long term play of this thing? Because
Hmm.
I've always been a pretty disciplined person. My mom was a pretty strict disciplinarian as well. Again, but not for sports, just for like everyday parenting things. So that's
Right.
kind of that was the clay that I was working with, was just those pieces right there. And just where I'm
Right.
from, that's what all the kids did. We played basketball. That's all we did all day. So one day
Right.
you want to be Penny Hardaway, next day you want to be Kobe, next day you want to be Michael Jordan. We want to be Allen Iverson. That's all we did was play basketball. Either
So
you were
those were
playing
your
basketball.
heroes.
What'd you say?
So those guys were your heroes. So the belief
Um,
or the idea came from idolizing some of these heroes or some of these all stars who
I
were
wouldn't call them. I wouldn't call them heroes. No, I don't. I don't really have any
no.
heroes or idols. No, I
Okay.
don't. I looked at them and I would take pieces from them. Like, okay, I like this move Kobe did. I'll try to do it. But I never looked at them like. It's not like if I met them one of them in person, I start crying. No, it wasn't like that. I like them. I
Yeah.
like their games. I would take pieces from them, but I never really had that. I always kind of looked at myself because of the background as far as sports that I came from, I really had to run off my own energy and off my own self belief because there were so many, most of the time, Mark, there was nothing in my reality, quote unquote, that said any of this was going to work out. And most of the people around me, the kids, we're kids. We talk trash to each other. That's all we did. And people would be like, Dre, you're not even on your high school team. Why are you out here practicing every day? You're doing this all for nothing. This is a waste of time. And for the most part, they were right because nothing I could say. It's not like I could queue up a YouTube video like, hey, look at this guy. He wasn't on the team either at age 17, and look what he became. There was no reference point that I could point to. It was just my own delusional idea. And what I tell people, Mark, is that your ideas are a delusion until they actually happen. Then you become a
Right.
visionary. But it's only when they actually happen. Had I not made it, I'd still be a delusional fool chasing a pipe dream of being a basketball player.
Man, I love that. And it shows you the power of just sticking with an idea, because that's what it
Mm-hmm.
was. You had an idea, and that idea was
Right.
I'm gonna play pro ball without any evidence that it was gonna happen,
Right. Exactly.
but you didn't stop driving toward that. And the work that you did through visualization just kept making it more and more alive for you internally. And you just
Exactly.
kept on proving it to yourself. You didn't have to prove it to anyone else, though, did you? It sounds like you're very
Well,
internally motivated.
100%, 100% internally motivated, while at the same time, two things that you said there. One, proving it to other people. I wanted to prove it to other people, and that was kind of part of the drive, that I wanted to prove it, but I didn't have anything to show. I didn't have anything tangible to show. Not until I signed my first contract. I was 23 years old when I signed my first contract. So all those
Yeah.
years I had to just keep working to get that opportunity. And secondly, when it comes to the internal motivation, yes, I'm very my reference points are all internal most of the time,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean I can't use something from the outside, right? I could hear something or see something or read something that is an externality and use that for my own internal frame of reference. I just use it as a tool. It's kind of like throwing wood on the fire. But at the end of everything, I'm always coming back to, what am I doing with myself, and what can I do, and how can I get myself moving, because those
Right.
external motivators won't always be around.
Were your parents supportive of this effort in the early days before you got the contract when it seemed like a pipe dream?
They were neutral, is what I usually tell people. They were
Okay.
neutral. Like, they wanted me to they want to raise a successful young man to become something, and move out the house and get a house and a car and a family and live happily ever after. So I think they were glad when I got the contract, because they're like, all right, at least he's gonna become something. Hopefully, they didn't know anything about that world,
Right.
but
Right.
at that time, up to that point, and actually, I'll tell you this: when it comes to the motivations, when I graduated from college, I'm 22 years old. I went to Penn State, got a business degree from Penn State. I use nothing that I got from my business degree in my business now today, as a just as another point. But anyway, I graduate from college. I get back home to Philadelphia. I'm in my parents' house. My parents, they say, "Well, what are you going to do now?" And I say, "Well, I'm going to be a professional athlete." And that conversation didn't go over too well. Not because they were against me being an athlete, but because they saw the whole story. They saw me only play 1 year of high school. They saw me play at a Division III college that is not this is not a farm for professional athletes. And I'm back home. I don't have that contract. So my parents just started asking me a bunch of reasonable, logical questions that anyone could ask anybody who says they're going into a particular career, even if they don't know anything about the industry. So they would ask me things like, well, do you have a plan? Do you have any job prospects? Do you have a job offer? What is your strategy to make this happen? I didn't have any good answers for any of those questions. Those are all really good questions. So all they were doing
Yep.
was holding up a mirror to my situation. And that it touched me, because not because they weren't negative about it, but they were just like, well, let's look at this logically. This doesn't make any sense. And they were right. So I took that conversation and I wrote about it in one of my books. That was really the emotional touch point that pretty much guaranteed that I was going to make it, because I wasn't going to allow the reality of the situation to beat me. It wasn't that I was mad at my parents. They just held up the mirror. They just showed me the reality that somebody needed to slap me in the face with that truth. It just happened to be them. And that truth became my target. And that's what I started focusing
Hmm.
on. And I tell people even to this day, that's one of the main reasons why I made it, is that conversation took place.
That's cool. Yeah, 'cause so many times parents can be inhibitors, to someone's dream because of that,
Hmm.
be practical conversation.
Right.
Get
And
your
they were
head
right.
out of my dad. My parents were like that. It's like, get your head out of the
Mhm.
sky. They didn't
Right.
support my initiative, so I had to basically be, all 100% internally locus of control and
Hmm.
do it just for myself. I'm curious though. You mentioned, it became about selling and marketing yourself. Um, so how did you do that? Like, how do you package Dre when you played 1 year in high school and you
Yeah.
walked on in college, and you didn't have the same resume as a typical someone gunning for a pro spot.
That's a great question. I get a lot of basketball players asking me that same question to this very day about themselves, not about me, but about
Right.
themselves. So when I graduated college, I knew I wanted to play pro, but I knew I didn't have any collateral. In other words, I had nothing that
Right.
I could show or say about myself that a pro basketball team could look at me and say, oh, we got to have this guy. So I knew that I was going to have to go to this event that they have in the sports world called an exposure camp. I don't know if you ever heard of
Hmm.
those. So exposure camp,
No.
basically you pay money, a whole bunch of athletes show up, and you all try to showcase yourself and show off, and hopefully you get a good review, third party third party validation of your abilities, and that helps you move forward. So I went to one of these events in 2005 to give everybody a frame of reference. Now, this was in Orlando, Florida. I'm still living in Philly at the time. So me and a couple of my college teammates were all graduated at this point. We rented a car and drove from Philly to Orlando. So that's a 19-hour drive overnight. Friday, we pull up in the parking lot. Saturday morning, 9 a.m. That's when the camp started. And we hopped out the car and started playing. Now, age 23, I could get away with that. I couldn't do it now, but I could do it then. So I played at that 2-day exposure camp. It cost $250. I had to pay them in cash at the door, actual cash, because I didn't have a bank account or a credit card at the time. But I played good at this exposure camp. Did really well. I got a really good scouting report from some professional scouts who were watching. I got the footage. Now I had what I needed. This was my golden ticket, that scouting report and that footage, because now I have something that I can show. I can go to a pro team or an agent and say, hey, look at this. Now, are you
Mhm.
interested? So I knew that my next step would probably, I knew I was probably going to play overseas. The NBA wasn't looking at drafting me. So I needed an agent because I had barely been out of the state of Pennsylvania, let alone had I been out the country. So I knew nobody over there knew me. So let me find an agent, because the agents are the go-between. Just like in the literary world, acting world, the
Right.
agents just, they had the connections to the jobs. So I started cold calling, Mark, every basketball agent I could find on Google. Now, again, this is
Yeah.
2005, so this is not the internet that we have today, but it was still the internet.
Right.
So I just Googled
Yeah.
basketball agents. Every single one I found, I would just call them or email them, whichever access they had. And I would say, hey, here's who I am. Here's what I have. I want to play overseas. Can I show you what I got? Now, the only reason I started calling now, because I've been out of college for a year, I only started calling now because I knew I had something to show. I knew it would be worthless
Yeah.
to do this the year before. So I called about 60 agents. And out of that 60, 20 of them said, okay, let me see what you have. So I sent them
Yeah.
my scouting report and my footage. Now, here's the thing. This is 2005. There's no YouTube yet. YouTube didn't come out till later that year. So I had a
Right.
VHS tape. You remember those, Mark?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so
They're
that
shipping those
VHS
things
tape,
out.
exactly. I had a double decker VCR in my at home. I had bought it for Christmas the year before because I knew I would need it. So I would go to Eckerd, the drugstore. I don't even know if they're still in business. And I would buy a 10-pack of blank VHS tapes. And I would just make copies of that footage from that scouting report. And I would mail those out in bubble mailers to all these different agents. So I mailed out about 20 of them on my own dime. Now, mind you, I don't have a lot of money at this point. I'm working at Valley Total Fitness, the gym. And that was that was my source of revenue. And out of that 20 agents, one agent contacted me back and was interested in representing me. And that one agent, he did sign me, and he's the one who helped me get my first contract. And that was in Kaunas, Lithuania in 2005. So that's how I got my career started.
That's cool.
Mhm.
So you hop on a plane from Philadelphia and you end up in Lithuania. You
Yeah,
don't know the language, right?
no,
And now you're playing with a bunch of Europeans.
right.
Were there any
There's a
other
couple
Americans
Americans
on the
there.
team with you? There were a
Yes,
couple Americans?
there was one American. I had one American teammate. He was a veteran of overseas. He had been playing for a couple of years, and I had one guy who was from Africa, but he spoke like fluent. He was what a native English speaker as well. So two English speaking
Right.
guys and me. Yeah,
So what was that experience like? I mean, just give us a sense for what it was like playing in Lithuania for their
man,
professional league.
it was surreal. It was a surreal
I bet.
experience because even that whole first week, I mean, so many times I just had to say to myself, like, man, I'm in damn Europe and Lithuania playing basketball for a living. Like just last week, I was at Valley Total Fitness selling gym memberships. Now I'm here in Lithuania
Yeah.
playing basketball, and you're a 6'4" black guy walking around with two other guys who are 6'6" and 6'9", and we're all black in this country, and everybody's looking at us. People are asking us for autographs. They don't even know who we are, but they're asking us for autographs because they know we're basketball players, right? That's how it is.
Right.
In almost every country I went to, it would be like that. People would just want to take pictures with you without even knowing who you are, just because they know you're probably a basketball player. So it
Oh,
was just
wow.
a surreal experience, and having euros, you're spending euros, paying for stuff, and the euro was stronger than the dollar at that point. I don't know where it is now, but
Yeah.
I was spending more money on stuff than I expected to spend, but that's how it was. But I wouldn't trade that experience for anything.
Yeah, and it's probably a good time to dispel the myth that you got rich over there. Most people think
Yeah, I was
professional
spending my
basketball
money.
players and professional athletes are making a shit ton of money, but the very few do, right?
It depends on where you're playing. It depends on your level as well. So when you first start
Yeah.
off, your level is come for me coming from where I came from. My level was low, but let's say somebody coming out of North Carolina or Duke, They would start at a higher level
Yeah.
than I started at. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
very wide range.
So how many years did you play pro over there?
Man, my career was 9 years long,
9
from
years, huh?
'05 to 2014, 15. Yeah.